Hello, I am once again creating more D&D characters. How many campaigns am I currently part of? Hard to say, actually genuinely hard to say for a lot of reasons, but I'm not asking you to be proud of me for being wise with the allocation of my time because I'm, well, not being wise with the allocation of my time, but I am asking you to be proud of me for being so brave and not making either of the two characters that I made a cleric. I know, character development, growth, shock. Lady Splitchin not playing a cleric character in a D&D campaign. Crazy. But let's get into it. So, this is a little unusual that I already have pretty much all the sketching and color blocking done, but here we are. I'm not sure if I just intentionally didn't record the sketching process or if I just deleted it, but I truly cannot seem to find a recording of that anywhere. So for my first character, you just get to see the rendering process, which I hope is okay, but the next character does have a full start to finish from the rough sketch to the render, I promise. But let's talk about this character, Exodus, spelled in a way that is so fun, just incredibly fun. This character, visually at least, is a little unconventional for what is perhaps considered the stereotypical D&D game. That's because the setting is one that my friend Agent, who you may have heard me previously refer to as Corvitica in older videos, has been developing for a while now. The setting, Haraway, is part of a much larger idea called Mageopolis, which is very much in progress. But if you'd like to check out that progress, I did leave a couple links in the description to the creators' not Twitter page, and P.S. they also make art, which is very, very fun, and also a link to Mageopolis's not Twitter page. But back to the incredible, wonderful urban fantasy city of Haraway. And you may have heard me talk about the city before in a previous video featuring my cleric character, Calliope. But putting Calliope and Exodus next to each other in the same setting does absolutely nothing to tell you what the environment is like, because Calliope is a very traditional, folksy looking character, and Exodus just stepped out of Cyberpunk 2077. Actually, to be honest, Calliope is the outlier in this environment. She was raised outside of the city and was quite distant from a lot of the more modern accommodations and traditions Haraway has to offer, and Haraway has some extremely modern technology. And speaking of modern technology, clearly Exodus is very much on the other end of the seesaw from Calliope in a technology standpoint. Exodus is very deeply linked to the city, obviously very in touch with technology, and more in tune to the culture and history. Even though the two characters are in the same world, we are working with a completely new timeline. This happens before the events of Calliope and her party, and also has nothing to do with the school that Calliope goes to, as far as I know. But we're not here to talk about Calliope, we're here to talk about Exodus. So, Exodus is a playable race that is unique to Mageopolis, called a cyber elf. Agent, our GM, has retrofitted the idea of cyber elves to suit D&D stats and features so that we can actually play in the environment that they've created without the condition that actual game mechanics have to be finished first. Cyber elves have several different generations, each with distinguishing features, and we're about to get very, very story heavy here, so get your popcorn, it is time for some lore. So, the first generation of cyber elves were not intended to actually be an independently functioning group of people, but initially were proprietary military design. The principle behind cyber elves is that they are humanoid but entirely modular, having humanoid decision making and sympathy, while being able to upload data, add various prosthetics, etc., resulting in the ideal upgradable soldier that can be used for the army. However, knowledge of the development of cyber elves was leaked, and a major debate was sparked, and it was eventually ruled that these were living beings with free will, and to create them and raise them as fodder for the army was unethical, and cyber elves should be allowed to live among quote-unquote normal people. Now, jumping forward a little bit in the history to the initiation of Generation 2 cyber elves. In the political structure of Haraway, there is an elven council with one representative for each elven subrace, high elves, dark elves, etc. Cyber elves up to this point have no representation and have been subsequently denied a seat on the council because, well, they've only ever successfully been produced in a lab and are considered to be altered natural elves. This prompted the drive to create a generation that could reproduce outside of a lab setting and in a way that could be viewed as more conventional, albeit through ports and wires in a fashion lacking any sort of intimacy. Even though Gen 2 proved to be successful at replicating the desired features, the council still considers this to be insubstantial evidence for legal consideration as a full subrace, and to the present day, even the conventionally born Generation 3 cyber elves are considered altered elves as opposed to their own kind. Gen 2 is where Exodus comes in. Exodus was created in a lab, determined to be the prime specimen, only to be cast aside when their purpose as a political statement resulted in failure. And I think this is a backstory that has informed a lot of the decisions that Exodus has made leading up to this moment. So, to be as distant from the perfect original body and its intended use, Exodus would go forward to get as many cosmetic modifications as possible. Different arms, different legs, a different voice box, a large LED screen on the back with a colorful image of a tiger. All of these to make the body as unrecognizable from its original state as possible. And I think that background really complements Exodus's monk subclass choice, way of astral self. So the premise behind a monk who picks the astral self path to meditate on is that they believe their physical body is inconsequential and that their ki represents their true form. Exodus is Gen 2, which at this point in time is quite an old generation. So Exodus is almost 250 years old, being my oldest D&D playable character ever, which means there have been a lot of body mods and a lot of time to think over the years. Astral Self monks level up to be able to use their ki to summon portions of their astral body, and I like to imagine that when Exodus summons their astral self, it appears in the form of a holographic glow of previous body modifications. Also, since body mods are a huge part of Cyber Elves, the GM has a really cool list of body mods that all apply different buffs that Cyber Elves can get every couple of levels. So the two that I picked up for building my character were having many eyes, which gives me a +1 to my initiative and also prevents me from getting surprised, and I also chose a tail, and that gives me a +1 to my acrobatics checks as long as it relates to balancing. And knowing that I can get more upgrades to my character as I level up is very exciting. I love bonus skills and traits, and also it gives me an excuse to keep updating Exodus's design in future redraws. I didn't get to talk too much at all about Exodus's current work as a private investigator, or the fact that I still haven't decided on a voice to use, although there is a running gag of installing a vocal synthesizer and making my character sound like Hatsune Miku, or changing my voice every couple of levels as if I have installed a new voice box. But I am out of time for the speed draw because clearly I'm so invested in the lore of this world. I hope you guys enjoyed Agent's world building just as much as I did, and I hope you guys enjoy Exodus's design as much as I do. Alright, onto a completely different character. You can already see quite early on by the color palette that I'm using and the shapes that are shaping. This is my 2'1" kobold paladin Fing, and he's truly just a little guy. Actually, I gotta be honest, I didn't want to decide what Fing's gender is. I know across recordings and Discord calls that my voice can come across as very stereotypically feminine, and people are very inclined to consider my characters she.
But this is the voice I'm using for Fing. It's a little squeaky, sort of gender neutral, and I kind of wanted to see what the rest of the party came up with based off of the vibes. So
I was hoping that the table would naturally just pick something, but the vibes are inconclusive. I'm personally leaning towards he, and I'm also going to be using he as I continue to talk about Fing, but you know, I'm kind of vibing with the overall comedic mystery of it all. Because almost none of the people in the D&D party with Fing watch my videos, I'm going to be quite a bit more generous with this character's backstory than I was with Exodus's, but if any of y'all are watching, a warning, spoilers ahead, and when we're in game, if you keep watching this, I trust that you will pretend to be surprised when we figure out each other's backstories. Fing is a kobold who was picked up as a baby by a group of paladins traveling through the kingdom of Erin. The paladins pack bonded with the little abandoned bright yellow kobold, naming him Fing, which was his first word after the paladins affectionately kept saying, "Hey little thing," to him. Fing turned out to be quite good at picking up the speech patterns of the paladins and very quickly became an indispensable part of the group. They provided him his first set of little chainmail armor, a little shield, and what has become his most treasured possession, a little paladin logbook, which is full of drawings, flowers, and various stories of adventures that he and his friends have been on. On one fateful day, little Fing awoke to find his entire crew horribly decimated by some creature or otherwise. As a sole survivor, Fing felt it was his responsibility to perform a reverent ceremony for the only group of people he considered family. Not being able to return to their homes, so holding the funeral as best his little self could, where they were by himself. As part of the ceremony, Fing took on the paladin oath of the crown that his companions had taken before him, though not with full understanding of exactly what he had sworn himself to, but determined to learn as much as he could about other humanoids, why they interact with each other the way they do, and also promising to be the most loyal protector of good things that a little kobold could possibly be. Oh, I love me some sunshine bright characters with a tragic backstory. I know it's cliche, but someone who chooses to be kind and good in the face of darkness is always one of my favorite character tropes. To be spiteful and evil as the world treats you is easy, but to be above all things kind and hardworking after it has all come crashing down, I think is a strength unlike anything else. And in the backstory, I hinted at several things pertaining to Fing's character build. He is a paladin with an oath of the crown, though I'm not sure which crown it is. I believe it's the Kingdom of Erin, but I gotta be honest, I have no idea. Fing's weakness is wisdom and consequently cannot read maps, so Fing's survival is pure luck and his learning style is a little unconventional. Also, I intentionally left my background very vague because I know that this GM likes to develop and uncover backstories, also because it just makes sense. Fing was very young when all of this happened. In fact, Fing is not even an adult in kobold years yet. Also, I had to make sure that Fing's entire previous party got destroyed, not just for the drama, but because Fing's whole motivation is loyalty to a fault. If there were any remainders of the party, given the choice, Fing would choose the first contract of loyalty made over the party that I'm actually supposed to be joining, so I had to make sure that there was no conflict of interest there. Sorry, Fing. But the last hint I made to his character build in the backstory was his inherent curiosity for learning about people who are different from him, and also his ability to very quickly pick up different languages. That's because Fing has the anthropologist background, which is actually a pretty cool background. You can learn very rudimentary communication with any group of people, having observed them for a day as part of having that background. And Fing having just a crazy amount of charisma and curiosity, it just really seemed to suit him. Fing is maybe not the most academically studied little creature, but he's had a very full life of observing others and taking notes in his little paladin journal. Now, I rolled kind of whack on his stats. I did get 2 17s, which is incredibly lucky for me especially, but I also rolled a 9 and a 10, which are like, I guess it could be worse. I did have enough modifiers available to me that I could have pushed all of the stats to a point where I didn't have to subtract from any of my game rolls. However, I thought, why worry about my wisdom stat? I'm not a cleric, and I put all my extra points and proficiencies into charisma skills. So aside from being very strong and happy, he could also convince you that in 15 minutes he could save you 15% or more on car insurance. I know the inclination when building a kobold character is to not build just a very strong version of the Geico Gecko, but there are 2 kobold stat bases available, one from the Mordenkainen book and one from the Volo book. If you go the Mordenkainen route, you don't actually have to put your stats into dexterity. You don't have to be a roguish character at all. So, I was like, why not just be the most absurdly strong and charismatic lizard child that I can possibly be? Speaking of strong, I have actually played a little bit of this character this year, and in the very first session, Fing takes part of a strength challenge that is part of this technology advancements exhibition that the kingdom is hosting, and it's sort of this sumo wrestling event against a large crab-shaped submersible, and it was a lot of rolling, and it was very close back and forth, but Fing won. But very unfortunately for the other players and NPCs, including a Luxodon, everyone else had very much less lucky rolls than me, which comedically made this just over 2 foot tall character the winner of the strength challenge. And that's Fing for you, who had a very striking entry into his first episode as a character. I love playing him. I love playing silly little guys, and he's going to be a fantastic excuse for me to build another D&D journal series, because he comes with a pre-built journal with a bunch of pressed flowers and stuff already, so y'all know I'm very excited about that. But there are my newest characters going into 2024, neither of which are clerics, although one is specifically a support role character as per usual. Just to clarify, I am also taking Inkashti into 2024 as well as Io, but everyone knows that the most difficult part of playing D&D is scheduling, especially around the holidays, so a lot of the games that I was playing last year have been on hold for a while and are having a really hard time picking back up, which is unfortunate, but also very reasonable, very understandable. But But I'm so excited for more adventures this year. I love creating characters anyways, and I'm looking forward to sharing the crazy adventures and shenanigans that these two get up to in their respective campaigns. I'm sure the future holds some wacky adventures for all of them, but who knows? Not me.